Sonoma to do fuel reduction work on Fort Ross Road. That project is starting on Monday. We know that a lot of people have questions about that project. We also have another project that will be starting fairly soon. We won't talk about that for too much today, but we want to give you some background. I'm just going to give you some background on Fort Ross Road, the overview. Matt Greene, our forester, who has been working with us for about 10 years, maybe more, to help develop these projects along with Marshall. And he's going to talk more about the logistics of what that project is. So, this project...
Can you focus that? Maybe it's my eyeballs.
We can't do anything else, Eric. I'm sorry. It's just there's too much light in here. And
I think it's partly your eyeballs, Eric. Sorry.
Yeah. Christopher, can you make sure that that's on? I don't even think it's going to make any difference to try to record it because you can't see it. But the bigger project was broken down into two tiers. One is Fort Ross Road, which is the main access for all of our communities, including Timber Cove, which I heard from Eric Lind, that during the Myers fire, traffic was just backed up because Myers was closed and Highway 1 was closed. So, it's the major access to Cazadero, our ranch communities, Timber Cove, and the other communities in the area. So this is phase one. We developed the project as a shaded fuel break to do 100 feet of roadside clearance on either side of Fort Ross Road. This phase right now, phase one, was funded by a grant from the County of Sonoma, Vegetation Management Grant. The total project was budgeted and estimated at just a little over $1 million. We were very fortunate to be one of the first grantees. We got $423,000 from the county to do this project. So we spoke with Marshall, we spoke with our firefighters, we downscaled that project to 30 feet with an agreement with the county that we would continue to look for funds to complete the project to its full 100 feet. We also, in that grant, were able to buy a chipper for our community chipper program. And what I would like to mention here is that this was a partnership. This project was developed in part, with Marshall, who has been working with us for many years, looking at these projects and helping us to prioritize. He's attended some, I know he attended the Navarro Ranch meeting. He's met with our landowners and all of you. We were awarded a grant by the North Coast Resource Partnership that allowed us to work with Jason Wells, the forester for Sonoma RCD, and be paid for his services to help develop this project.
I think that's one of the biggest grants that we gave last year. Most amount of money, believe it or not, $400,000.
Yeah, we were fortunate. We were in the top 3, and we were one of the big ones. Thank you, Marty. We know that CAL FIRE was a big, support for us in that grant selection process. And then the Ag and Open Space District is administering that grant for the county. We also, written into that grant was a chipper, and there's our guys. I don't know if you can tell, you can't really see. There's Daniel Schoenfeld, Christopher, and Charles Hope. This is a project that we did on, Melissa, what was that road?
Cloud Road.
The Cloud Road, thank you. With that chipper, the chipper was funded by the county, and operations are supported by donations. We're able to provide that chipper to the communities for private roads and ranch roads for free, thanks to the generosity of a lot of people in this community who are helping to support the program. And getting back to Fort Ross Road here, I really want to make a point here of letting you know who's going to be working on that road. We are very, very happy and very proud to invest that money from that grant to our local economy. Our forester, Matt Greene, lives over on Plantation Ranch. We have Noah Brown from Cazadero, Charles Hope, we all know here in our community, and Bill Seymour and his son TJ with Timbercoat Excavating. And what I'd like to just mention here is that when we wrote this grant, we budgeted $4, gas at that time was $4.40 a gallon, and we budgeted it at $5. Now it's $7 plus. We are so over budget on this grant, and these contractors, all three of them are taking a cut. You know, they lost economy of scale, they budgeted at a per acre cost, and are working for time and materials now, and they're doing that because they live here. This is their community, they want to see this project done. We don't want to cut acreage. I'm looking for more money. I'm looking for non-competitive grant money, that micro grants, to help build this budget so we can complete the road and not have to cut. We have our forester Matt over there on the left. There's Charles, and there's Noah Brown, and next to him is Bill Seymour. I'm sorry you can't see these photos, but so that money, that $423,000, is staying right here in this community, employing our local workers. We were just also awarded $946,000, $947,000 from CAL FIRE to do fuel reduction work on the ranch roads. These are the roads. We'll be talking more about this grant project later on. We're signing contracts next week, so we have a lot of planning yet to do, project planning, CEQA compliance, landowner outreach. So we hope to be starting that project after the first of the year, and so we will be having another meeting on all the ranches. We partnered with the Muniz ranches on this project as well, and that has been great. And that came out of some meetings that we've been having here for another group, the Sonoma Coast Collaborative, with Marshall. We had all the fire services from the Sea Ranch down to Fort Ross and meeting and talking about who, all the different projects and how we could partner, what made sense, who should apply to the county, who should apply to CAL FIRE, who might partner. We partnered with Muniz because they had a small project. They already got funded for, I think, phase 1, phase 2, and this was phase 3 or 4. And so their small project we looped into our project, and we're excited about this. And like I said, we will be talking more about this later on during the year end. So it takes a village. Over the years, these are the organizations and agencies, public agencies, that we have been working with to create these projects. Central to all of that has been CAL FIRE and Marshall. Marshall has met with us, he's met with landowners, he's met with HOAs, he's driven all the back roads with us. He knows these roads probably better than some of them.
No, I don't know.
And his knowledge and expertise in helping us develop these projects is invaluable. But we also, Stephanie Larson has been here from UC Cooperative Extension to talk to us about grazing. We've met with Natural Resource, NCRS. All these acronyms. when we first started developing the Fernfield project, and together with Stephanie and a few others, we looked at what are the tools that we can use in this area to demonstrate to landowners the tools that we have in our toolbox to deal with fire. And so grazing, of course, was one of them. Fred Ufrat came and wrote a prescription for that project, and it was through Brooke Edwards, who submitted it to Fire Forward for us. At the time when we were developing these projects, burn bosses, we were told, were $5,000. And so we were looking for grant money for that. And so it took some time. We had a pandemic, things moved forward, and here we are. And so we are so happy to have Sasha Berlman working with us as one of our collaborative partners as we move forward on especially the CAL FIRE grant. Fort Ross Road is pretty much already worked out, and I don't know if that fire would even work anywhere on Fort Ross Road where we're working, but definitely on the ranch roads. And so we will be having more community meetings about that coming up. Let's see, anyone else here? As with anything we do, all the success relies on landowner outreach. We cannot do anything without support of the landowners. Melissa Bushner is our new outreach coordinator. She's done a fabulous job outreaching to landowners. This is a map of Fort Ross Road. This is what we've been working on for a year. All the dark, all the dark green parcels are landowners where we already got liabilities waivers signed and submitted by the landowner. The light green parcels are the ones that initially signed up to participate, and we are still working on getting their liability releases. The red ones are people who have not. So if you see your parcel on this map, and you know some of your neighbors around you who are either red or light green or gray, please talk to them and ask them to, to get involved. We're starting on Monday. We're hoping that as we begin this work, people will see, and people have concerns, and people are calling because they think we're PG&E, and we're just gonna, cut everything down. And we have one landowner in particular who has no PG&E, made all these promises to me, and they came on my property and they just took whatever they wanted. And we're hoping that as we start this project, he and others will see that the care and the attention that went into planning this project. So if you need anything or want to know anything about the project, please contact Melissa. And she is the person right now. She's the rock star. As I said.
Which end of the road are you starting on? Fire Street or town?
Both ends.
You're starting at both
We
sides?
have multiple operators, and they're going to
Three.
be starting in two different places.
Okay.
So the first group will probably be starting around Meestraff area and heading east. The other group will be starting probably around By the Way and heading west.
Yeah, we had, we hired all three contractors. We put out a request for bids, and we thought we were gonna hire one. We hired all three of them, and it just really made sense for their, because of their resources and what they had available, what kind of equipment they had available, and they were all good. And so,
Are those PG&E, is that PG&E now that's all over?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see why people are getting upset too.
Yes.
You've got things around big redwood trees on.
I'll tell you more about that in a few seconds.
yeah, we'll talk about that. I contacted PG&E for a power line delineation map, and Matt's been talking to them also. And we've been working with Permit Sonoma, who is trying to get an idea. I said, what are we going to do out there? We're going to be out there, they're going to be out there. and what happens when we all start working in the same area.
Yeah.
So Matt will speak a little bit more to that, but our contact at Permit Sonoma is also reaching out to them to see if we can get some kind of a plan. I do know that the workers get their work schedule every Friday for the following week. So it's going to be one of us having to go out there, meet with them and find out where they're going to be. Hopefully Matt has a little bit more information on that because I haven't been able to catch up with him about how are we going to work together along this road. As we know, it's not that wide. Tom?
Yeah, do you have protocols for like evacuation warnings or?
We have everything. Yeah, our contractors had to sign a contract that included like a 5-page fire policy that we vetted through Marshall here, and and Matt has just had a 4-hour safety meeting with them the other day. We've been in touch with them. We've been talking to them, and he'll talk a little bit more about that when he. And you can ask him those questions because he's been talking to them more, even though I've been at those meetings. Yes.
Two of the contractors, certainly Charles and Seymour, have been in the fire department for years.
Yes, and I know that Noah Brown has done a lot of work on our ranches. I was surprised as I mentioned his name, how many people said, "Oh yeah, he was on my property. Oh yeah, he took trees down." So we're happy with our contractors, and like I said, they're losing money on this deal. There's just there's just no other way to put it. But they're here because they care. Okay, I put this slide in only because we've been through this. We've been here before. Some of us, I know there are a few of us here who lost homes in the Creighton Ridge fire. Those of you who came later, we've all been dealing with that fire for 52 years. And 50 years, however many years it's been. 40.
Not that long.
Yeah. I moved here 52 years ago. November 15th, 1970, I moved up here. But also, that is Hugh and Charles Hope. Charles's uncles. They're twins. I can't tell you which one is which. I just found out from Charles yesterday that his Uncle Charlie passed just yesterday, which makes me very sad. Yeah. But also what I want to show is that this is a community also fighting that fire. People were out there, and I love this man, Ed Poe. What was it, the Cal Fire, the California Fire District, Cal Fire. He was our marshal at the time, and he came up before Creighton Ridge and talked to us about fire, showed us how to cut a fire line with the McLeod. I still use a McLeod; it's still my most favorite tool. It was a community. It was a community that came together, and it was a community that rebuilt up to where, brought us to where we are here now. And I think that, that wasn't that long ago, and we've all lived through it. And I love this picture. It's an uphill battle. We're moving forward. But this is also part of one of the 2 rainwater catchment grants that we wrote, one with the Guala River Watershed Council, one with Sonoma RCD. And what I'd like to just say about this is that these tanks provide, we got almost 500,000 gallons of water savings through these programs and through these rainwater catchment tanks. And each one of these tanks is fitted with a fire hose adapter. So each of the 50-something landowners who have 10,000 gallons of water on their property, that's water also for helping us fight fires. These programs were drought related, but as we know, it's all related. And again, as I say, you know, we're moving and we're moving forward. So, thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to Matt, who is going to talk to you now about Fort Ross Road and what we've been talking about on and off throughout this presentation. Thank you. What I'd like to say while Matt's getting set up here, Matt and I have been working together for over 10 years. He has just put in so much time helping us develop these projects and getting them funded and being able to pay him just makes me personally feel very, very good.
So, I'm the guy that's probably gonna get tomatoes thrown at him today. And before that happens, I just wanna echo some things. Most of you know Marshall or have met Marshall, but there isn't a better battalion chief in this whole state. I worked from Fort Bragg to Santa Cruz to Cobb, and I've met a lot of them. Coming to these meetings, being involved in this community, he's the real deal, guys. So every chance you get, you thank that man. You know, he's got some big shoulders to live up to. His predecessor, Ed Poe, is a legend as well, so he knows it. Anyway, so how many of you guys have actually participated in the community work programs, the community chipper or the weekend work crew? Raise your hands for me.
I got a lot.
Would it be surprising if I told you that you were probably breaking the law in some way, shape, or form with those projects?
Yes. Been doing it for years.
Understood.
Here, here.
And I'm not here to discourage you today.
Yeah.
What I am here to tell you is that I am the person that is bringing rules and regulations to this area. And I'm sorry to do that, but understand that there are rules and regulations for all of this kind of work. Whether it be protection of endangered species, protection of historical sites and natural cultural resources of Native American sites, protection of things like unstable areas so that we don't cause landslides, complying with any number of county codes and regulations. My job as a registered professional forester, first and foremost, is to protect the natural resources in the landscape that I am working on. So that means complying with all those rules, getting the permits necessary to do that, doing the surveys and studies that are needed to protect those resources, and then finally implementing the project so that those operators know what the rules and regulations are and really follow through on those rules and regulations so that we're not getting somebody in trouble. A lot of people think that foresters are just involved in cutting timber, and that's growing more and more by the day not to be the case. We are kind of the individuals that the state is tapping to do the work that Sasha needs for the permitting, that Marshall needs for the permitting. And so a lot of this discussion today is about the permits that we're pulling so that CAL FIRE and Marshall can be involved in these processes, so that Sasha knows that her activities aren't doing something to a cultural resource or an endangered species, or the crews that we have that we're hiring aren't harming things.
And the big thing financially is all the grants are going to require.
Yes, so that is a huge part of this, is there is a bill in legislation right now that will go into effect January 1, 2022, that says that all of this work that gets funded by grants has to go through a permit. So the days of doing a lot of these things without the permits, if you're going to get grant funding or rely on grant funding, those days are done starting January 1. Actually, they're done today because this project is being done with a permit. These are big changes. You know, I know the community. I've lived here for 23 years. I'm still a newcomer, I know. You know, I know how many houses were built without permits for building code, you know, building permits. I know how many roads have been built without grading permits. I know how much activity has been done. I'm very fortunate. I work for the Kashaya Band of Pomo Indians. I am their forester. They have a TIPO, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, who came on just as the Myers fire happened. Our first conversation together was, how do we ensure that our cultural history isn't destroyed by fires? That's huge in this area. We have always had you can't do anything in this area, hands off our natural, you know, our cultural areas. He wants to be proactive in protecting their resources. We have agencies that want to be proactive in protecting the resources while still getting the money out to get the projects done. Sonoma County, we got this year a CCI grant, Judy said, for $947,000. That is the largest grant in Sonoma County, and I think that was the largest grant of a non-RCD in the entire state.
Yep.
That is massive, folks.
Massive.
The work that just got done for those grants is huge.
Yeah,
That
clap,
being said-
everybody, clap.
Anyway, so nobody's throwing fruits and vegetables yet, I'm surprised, but go ahead.
Can I thank you actually instead, because you know what, I personally, one of the things I need to hear is that there is oversight of that nature you're speaking of. I want to know somebody pays attention to the wildlife in national habitat. And one of the things you notice with these PGD people, they don't know the names of any plants. They never notice the plants. And they don't seem to care.
Yeah. So I will tell you this.
So thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm a biologist first and foremost. I got into forestry because I realized that biologists at the end of the day didn't have a say in how the landscape was being managed for that wildlife. So I look at things a little bit differently than some foresters. That's where I'm coming from. Within the project area of Fort Ross Road, I will tell you, we have northern spotted owls, federally endangered species. We have red-legged frogs, federally listed species. Yellow-legged frogs, species of special concern. Steelhead, federally threatened, state threatened. We have Napa False indigo, which is a plant that is listed by CNPS as being rare. I can't remember what the listing is. Rick might know. We have the potential for many other things. We have cultural resources. So your landscape is a very naive landscape when it comes to permits. You don't have a history in here of timber harvest plans being submitted. You don't have a history of large environmental impact reports being done. So we're working on a pretty naive landscape. Some of the ranches have had impact reports that were done when the ranches were formed. Some of those cultural sites are known. Some of those cultural sites we still have to find. A lot of the endangered species can move from year to year or day to day. So part of that is absolutely, we are out there having to do these surveys to keep everybody out of trouble and try not to have things like take occur. We did, for Fort Ross Road, we did spotted owl surveys. We know there's fish and frogs there. We've gone through, you know, Judy said we had a 4-hour training this week with the operators. I'm gonna be meeting with the third one this afternoon and have that training again. Going over, here's what red-legged frogs look like, here's what yellow-legged frogs look like. Don't touch them, call me. You know, they can't pick them up and take them off the edge of the road. That's actually take of an endangered species. Just picking up that frog and walking off the road, that's take. So, you know, yes, absolutely, that's my role in this, is to try and make sure that the resources are being protected. Trying to make sure that people's water systems are protected. We have a whole lot of springs that are developed. My job is not to look at if those springs are legal or not. I don't care. My job is to make sure that they're protected. Making sure that the creek is evaluated and protected. So we've actually gone and classified all the water courses along Fort Ross Road. So 9.3 miles There's a whole lot of water courses out there to classify. Rick's over here laughing because he knows what that entails. Anyway, so there's a regulatory process for all this. In this process of Fort Ross Road, and I'm going to jump to my next slide here, Julie's kind of already gone over what the overview of it is. This is not a bare earth, scorched earth fuel break. This is what is called a shaded fuel break. The purpose of the shaded fuel break is 4 or 5 things. A, we're working near water courses, so we have regulations that restrict the amount of canopy that can be removed in order to protect the beneficial functions of that water course. 2, everything out here sprouts. And so if we just go and bare ground everything, it's gonna sprout back next year and it's gonna be this tall. So trying to keep shade over the top of this is going to slow down that regrowth. It's going to give us time to get more grants in place, more landowner input, more landowners saving their rainy day funds to continue this work. Because this is really just the first stage. You know, I already said it earlier, 5 to 7 years is all these treatments are designed to last for. There are some other treatments I'll get into at the very end of this that are going to be a lot more controversial, but they're tools in my toolbox at the end of the day, and my job is to give you the information and the education. Somebody asked earlier, I can't remember who it was, that asked about, you know, starting an education program. Part of this CAL FIRE grant is that education, and this really does start today. So, the third purpose of this fuel break is, as Judy said, ingress and egress. For you guys to get out of here, Marshall's crew, the volunteer crews to get in here to help in fire. This is not a fuel break that is designed to stop fire. It is a fuel break that is designed to get personnel in. It's not being placed in the right place to be an effective fuel break for stopping fires. That will come with the second grant that we'll talk about later today. Fire, as a kind of generalization, and Marshall and Sasha are going to be much better at this, but we really want our fuel breaks in strategic locations. We want them on ridge tops, and we want them along the roads. We want them along ridge tops because that is where we can actually be effective at fighting fire. We can use Marshall's full toolbox, whether it be air attack, tankers, dozers, hand crews. It gives him a much better location. So part of the next year process is going to be designing a lot of these things and putting these things that are in Marshall's head, my head, Judy's head, Sasha's head, into a permit. Also getting your input as well. However, it's having realistic discussions. Strath Road, terrible place to actually fight a fire. It's in the bottom of the creek. It's not where we would actually really do a good defendable fuel break. But we're going to treat fuels along Strath Road because that is one of the main arteries to get you out and them in.
So that's a good example of priorities. You know, priority for stopping fire would be ridge stop. Priority for evacuation is your safety, get firefighters in this road. In some places, those priorities align. So that's when you ask about priorities. A lot of this stuff is variable. But this is a great first start. It's the Golden Gate Bridge, right? Protecting the hammering.
And I would agree. I think Rick brought up, the home hardening discussion. That is huge. However, these grants that we are getting are not allowed to be within a 100-foot footprint of your structures. By state law, you are legally required as landowners to treat that 100-foot space by yourselves. The state cannot pay for that. The federal government can't pay for that. Did we lose something?
Your Zoom
Somebody's
No.
Zoom is going away. And so understand that these grants, while they are effective in some places, they are not going to do everything that is needed. You as homeowners have to, start looking at those things. I don't see them ever paying for home hardening at the state level. Maybe insurance companies figure out a way to get grants. I don't know that those are all best guesses, but I would agree. We need home hardening. A lot of these homes were built in the 60s and 70s. They are not up to current fire code. We'll see how that goes. Anyway.
I can just add on this. All these projects that we're working on gotta be community benefit. They can't individually benefit one landowner only. So as you're looking at this project, you're like, why aren't we working on some other road, or why aren't we working on Mohawk Bridge for example? We need to get these things shovel ready. So come get involved, talk to your neighbors, like start forming stuff. That maybe in 3 years down the road, we get another grant. And that's where, think about this. This is just low hanging fruit a little bit, working along roads. I don't see, maybe there'll be like with the floodplain, federal money available or something to convert homes over or retrofit. But you're not gonna see, I don't think, CAL FIRE grants going into home retrofitting right now. It's about vegetation management. We don't think about it, but the trees, the creeks, everything, it belongs to the people, not you individually. That's why the hunting permits and go shoot deer, that deer, or kill deer, however you wanna kill them. But those belong to the people. And so that's how this is being looked at, is this is a natural resource. This is a state responsibility. This is, how do we get these projects done? How does CAL FIRE fund these projects? So you gotta look at it kind of in a different way that you may normally look at this stuff. And that's why someone like Matt and RPF's got to protect the environment. PG&E foresters have a different mission.
So the last piece of this, of why we're doing this work, is that this activity should be an improvement on the health of the forest. We're not out there cutting big redwood trees, big fir trees, big anything trees. This primarily is looking at trees 2 to 10 inches in diameter. If a tree is over, or 12 inches or over, I actually have to mark that tree and say, have input into why that tree is getting removed. The idea that sudden oak death is going away, it's not. It's getting worse. Unfortunately, because of how it spreads, it is going to be here for a while. Somebody asked earlier, or somebody said earlier, if you go out into the Creighton Ridge fire, you'd never know what happened. I would heavily argue against that discussion. I go out into those areas now, and the soil is still pyrolyzed. That fire was so hot and so bad. You go out there and look at those trees that were planted 79, 80, 81 by a lot of the land folks in this room. Those trees haven't grown because the soil is so badly damaged. Part of this, foreseeable future is going to be trying to actually do things that are restoring some of those forests. There is not a real big commercial endeavor in most of these ranches that I can foresee anytime in the near future. This is not a commercial timberland. Maybe in 2 or 3 generations we can restore some of those lands, but in some places you're never going to have redwood. You were a white oak species, or you were a marginal grassland. I don't know how many folks in the last 2 or 3 years. So February 2020 is a great example. Up on Myers Grade, we started to see all of the fir trees along the grasslands die. Those were never forests. They've just become forests because we've excluded fire and burning for the last 150 years. And so it's going to take some time and education about what the natural landscape can support, how to push it in different directions in the future, and really come to the realization that what we have now is not a natural state and a natural condition. We can do better, and we're going to have to.
Something I'm not hearing you saying is, hey, the climate's changed. It seems like that's a tremendous impact.
I said it earlier, but I would agree wholeheartedly.
For my 40 years of being here, watching the water disappear, watching various different trees die, the whole thing is changing. So, our ideas on what can be done and should be done might need to be changing as well. I know you've studied it far more than me, but just from my own living here, it's so different than when I lived here 40 years ago.
Agreed, wholeheartedly. I would say that if anybody thinks that a forest is a static place, we're going to have some work to do, folks.
Right.
Our forests, our landscape as we know it, had glaciers over us 18,000 years ago. So we're still a fairly new landscape. I mean, in the context of what we're really talking about. I mean, some of these redwood trees can live 2,000-3,000 years, maybe longer. We don't know. Some of these oaks, some of these oaks can live hundreds of years, if not longer. We are a speck. But yes, we have to be thinking about how climate is evolving. I moved here 23 years ago. It used to be foggy every morning till 11 o'clock on CB Road. Now, this year,
Been foggy a lot,
yeah, but I mean, last year was the first, last year we had good normal fog. This year, I would argue it's been pretty bleak as compared to 23 years ago when I moved here. Anyway, get into the bulk of this. So Judy showed you project area is 9.3 miles. Not everybody has signed up. We are working on that. We will see how we can get that going. This is just a parcel map. So
I can't really see your photo. Where does the project start and where does it end?
starts at the top and ends at the bottom.
Yep.
So
Fort
It's 9
Ross.
point- it's Fort Ross Road.
Not Little Fort Ross.
So Route 1 to Cazadero.
Cazadero to
Not Route 1,
Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, sorry, from top down. The state park is a whole
Yeah.
let me rephrase. Anything on the west side of Seaview Road is a whole different animal and a different discussion because it's in the coastal zone and we aren't going there right now.
Correct.
So there is work occurring there with state parks.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, go ahead.
Do you have any resources that you could provide for us to pass on to neighbors that might be really hesitant for change and like understanding the necessity for this? Because we definitely, I feel like we're facing that. And,
Record it right there.
okay.
I'm
There-
gonna
so-
write up the summary of this
Yeah.
meeting as best as I can. I think you're on our email list. If you wanna forward it to people and also ask them to sign up, because like that's how we communicate, that'd be
Please.
great.
I think the best thing would be after a little bit of the road's done, maybe invite people out to do a before and after comparison of what it looks like with treatment.
We
So-
will be doing that with the county. We'll be doing a small little press conference, as being one of the first, grantees for this vegetation management grant. And, so we'll be doing something, but that's a good point, Marshall. That would be a good time also to bring people out. And if you have not signed up for our newsletter, please, we have a sign-up sheet on that table over there. Add your name to that list so you can receive information on what we're doing. We're doing a great job communicating with our subscribers in our communities about the work that we're doing. So please sign up, and if you haven't signed in, please sign in on the sheet. These sign-up sheets and these meetings, we use them in all of our grant writing to show how we are doing outreach to the communities.
So, on top of that, I would say that Dave and Jim, many, many years ago, started writing forest management plans in this community. I've written probably 20 or 30 of them. A lot of landowners have those management plans. Maybe they're willing to share them so that people can understand what's in them, what things are being discussed, how they're being discussed. There is also a program that CAL FIRE offers called CFIP, California Forest Improvement Program. Its goal is to get small landowners into managing their landscape, into helping with climate change and fuel reduction and making healthy ecosystems. That program is available. It is funding right now. You have to have more than 20 acres of forest land. You can't combine 5 acres of yours with 10 acres of your neighbors and 5 acres of another acre. But there is, funding there. The NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, has programs to prepare forest management plans so that trained professionals can help individual landowners out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, is it
Just
90%
wondering,
now?
as part of the program, you did mention that there are a fair number of illegal housing out here. You can't get any of those grants, right?
Yes, you can.
You can't sign
Yes, you
up
can.
for that.
Yes.
I don't care, and the state doesn't care if your house is illegal for that program.
Okay,
Does not matter.
okay.
We don't, so and Marshall can talk to you more about this.
Okay.
But the CFIP program is a non-regulatory program. They don't walk around with ticket books saying, oh, you're drawing water from the creek or your house. No, They are there strictly to try and improve the forest health. That is their mission.
Public forest.
Are you the forester that regulates that?
Regulates, no. I am a private forester. Marshall, his counterpart would be Kim Sohn. She is the unit forester for this area.
Okay, so that's.
She is in charge of enforcing forest practice violations. So if you were to go out and clear 3 acres of ground for your house and not have a permit for it, she would be the one visiting you.
I was referring to the CFIT.
So the CFIT program's person for our area, his name is John Romali. He is brand new to this position. He's not brand new to the department, but he's only been in the unit for 3 or 4 months now. He's getting up to speed. He is incredibly overwhelmed because he has not just this county, but every county from Mendocino to Santa Cruz and then some.
Did you say John Romali?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Megan Reeves.
Okay, what I'd
It
like
was,
to say
yeah,
is that we
she's-
will put this information, resources, Demetra, in our newsletter, who to contact for CFIT, and other people that we might be talking about, if you don't mind, Sasha, also including yourself, you and Matt Greene.
Hey, Matt, do you need a forester to have a plan? for-
Yes.
Yes.
Legally, you have to have a forester prepare that plan because it is providing specific practices and recommendations, and that is what my license allows me to do as opposed to somebody who is an arborist.
And what's the overall cost?
It varies by acreage and it can vary tremendously.
Rough number.
The state is going to probably pay somewhere on the order of $5,000 as a reimbursement. Some of these forest management plans can run for $7,000 to $8,000. If you've got 1,000 acres, it's gonna cost a whole lot more than that because you're actually, part of this is you're doing a forest inventory, you're doing a road inventory to look at sediment and erosion. You're looking at a lot of things to try and get the health of the land and make you a responsible steward of that
So in other words,
land.
a private person would pay you upfront and then.
And then you get reimbursed by the state for a portion of it. Right now, that portion is about $5,000, roughly.
And what we did about maybe, I don't know, 7 years ago, we did, working with Jill Butler at the time, what we called application clinics. And Jill sat down with landowners, we scheduled you 1 hour, bring your APNs, all your information. She helped you fill out those applications, send them in. We were able to get 15 forest management plans submitted, funded, and written. And I'd say Matt probably wrote about 95% of those plans. So, but the point I'm making is that it was worth it for someone, we're talking about economy of scale again, it was worth it for a forester to have 15 landowners and writing 15 forest management plans for a certain amount of money than it would be for one. So we're looking at including forest management plans in our next grant, the next CFIT grant. And there's another grant coming out that we'll talk about later. So if we can get, a half a dozen of you who want to do plans, then we can sit down and really talk about it a little bit more. With Matt, you are certainly, you can hire any forester you want. We use Matt just to maintain consistency in our area and as part of our education. And so that will be coming up and we'll be working more on that later.
He's also one of the best ones, so.
Yeah, there's that too.
Solid.
So Sonoma County is very fortunate. This county put together a LiDAR data set, and LiDAR is satellite data. This is one of the few counties in the state that has done this. They just redid it again. This is actually the fuel loading for our area. Red being the worst, green being grassland. And this is fuel with, I think this is what, 3-year fuel heights?
Before 2013, right?
Yeah, this was 2013, so the new stuff hasn't even come out that shows basically the sudden die-off. But you can see, here's part of Fort Ross Road. That big red blob in here, that's a lot of fuel loading, folks. That's a lot of the burn scar historically that was in the 78 fire. You know, and so even though this is not necessarily in the most strategic place to stop a fire, it's got a lot of fuels. You know, and part of this is also, we all live here. We use this road in the middle of winter. What's been happening the last 2 or 3 years? Yeah, so I mean, part of this is also just to try and, you know, get ahead of the curve. We've done some sample marking. You might see trees that are painted blue on Drew Bannister's property and on Daryl Schirkenbach, I'm sorry, his property. Those are some of the trees we're looking at. The untrained eye is asking questions of those. Some of those oaks look healthy from an untrained eye. You go look at those trees and they're actually full of sudden oak death at this point. You can actually see the cankers. The trees just haven't shed their leaves yet. You know, and so realize that we're looking at this from a forest health standpoint, from trying to keep the road open, fuels. I'm looking at this from a whole bunch of different perspectives and also trying to protect the biology. So anyway, this gives you an idea of the fuels that we're actually dealing with in this area. Let's see. Judy's gone over most of this. The biggest thing here is that, again, this has to comply with the forest practice rules. That rule book is 300 pages long. Sonoma County's riparian ordinance. A lot of this road goes along Turner Canyon, which is a class 1 steelhead watercourse, Ward Creek, which is a class 1 watercourse. So we have real restrictions. You may say, you're not cutting enough trees. I legally can't. So in some places, it's not gonna look as well spaced out as I would like. The goal here was to have 15 to 18 foot spacing between each tree that we're retaining. That still gives us some shade. That gives these trees room to grow, get healthy. Those are parts of those things. So in the riparian zones, I have to maintain 80% overstory canopy. That's a lot of canopy. So, again, it's going to be light impact. The rest of it, we're trying to retain 50% canopy. The reason that number is at 50% and probably should be at 40% in some places is that Marshall can actually get an air tanker or a helicopter to effectively drop and that material make it to the ground in the event of a fire. 40% is kind of the standard that Marshall or the CAL FIRE is using these days for retardant to actually be effective on the ground.
Are you cutting the limbs of some of the bigger trees?
So yeah, so we're cutting limbs, hopefully at least 6 feet. In some places we're hoping to go as high as 10 feet to limb trees. Those limbings will be done with pruning saws and pruning poles. They will not be done with a masticator that the county likes to make things look like somebody amputated an arm with a hatchet.
You just realize that might be on the trunk, 10, 12 feet up, but the limb, right, that's 6 feet off the ground, the lowest limb.
Yep.
So I might put my 20 feet up the tree trunk, but it's to get 6 feet off the ground.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say on the riparian zone, did you say 18 or?
80. 80.
Keep the water.
Sorry, and I realize that my voice is really bad in this situation, so please don't hesitate to ask. Primarily, we are going to be using chippers in the road prism, hand falling things into the road, blowing chips back over the edge of the road. Those chips are supposed to be less than 6 inches in depth so that we don't have problems with spontaneous combustion. I can't, with this permit that we pulled for, or that we were forced to use for this amount of money, we are not allowed to leave the road prism with equipment. That's unfortunate because we could be doing things a little differently. We were hamstrung in how the permit came together for this. Realize that this is going to impact everybody for the next 2 months, period. It's going to be 10 to 15 minute road closures. I realize that that's an impact to your traffic and your travels. Please plan accordingly, leave 15, 20 minutes ahead of time. If you're going from the top, you may actually hit 2 places where we're doing work that you may have a 30-minute delay. We're doing this with 3 operators, not just because it's community building, but also to try and reduce the amount of time closure.
And one thing on that too is we'll have an idea on a fairly regular basis, but we can't plan it out now, where our crews will be. And if we do know, we will put a notice probably in the CHCP that we're gonna be working from here to here between now and then and this time. It's a question that has come to me by several people. Can you just let us know? And I know, I said, no, we can't, but we can try.
They're gonna be moving daily. Their goal, and Noah's in the back right now, 2/3 of an acre to an acre a day, roughly, production-wise. So that's 300 to 400 feet in length of road section.
What are the hours?
They're gonna be working from 6:30 in the morning till roughly 4:30 or 5. They're not gonna be working on weekends, and they're not gonna be working on holidays. They're also not gonna be working on red flag days. So, realizing we have a 1-year period to get this grant started, permitted, and operated. We realize we're working during the fire season. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's a benefit to us actually being on the pavement with the equipment. Things can still happen, absolutely. We realize that there's gonna be times that traffic is heavier. We'll see what those times are. I'm expecting 6:30 or 7 to 8:30 or 9. Maybe people are going to town, people are going to work. We're gonna try and do what we can to not have the road blocked at that point in time. We may have to, we'll see how it all works out. Let's see. All the crews have water tenders or water on site. That was part of our fire protection measures. They have fire tools. Every person on that tool, or every crew should have a plow, a blast, and a shovel. Fire extinguishers are gonna be on the equipment. There's gonna be a lot of fire checking. That's one of the big things that I'll be checking when I go to the job site. Lift up the firebox, make sure the tools are there. Make sure the tools just didn't go to town because somebody broke down and had to go get a part. Doesn't do us any good if the tools are in town.
And each contractor will also have communication systems of some sort. If you need a phone, Charles Hope is the one and only place on Fort Ross Road that we know that we can go to. But they will have radios and, did we talk about it?
Sorry, go ahead.
The satellite, yeah, the
GRMS, they'll all have radio connectivity with themselves, yes.
Each other.
Yeah, okay, good.
All right, so what are we really talking about? And I don't know how well this is gonna show up back here. Yeah, it looks okay. Move the ball. Sorry. So, before and after photos of some of this type of work that we've done in some places, just as a quick kind of give you an example with the, so just for reference, here's this bench is right there. Before and after.
I'd like to say a lot of this work is a, surrogate for what natural fire would have done. Low intensity, fire stays on the ground. We're trying to replicate that. Grazing does the same, other things try to do the same. So that's what, trying to simulate a natural process through, they use the word logging to
So a couple more before and afters, just showing you, kind of lifting those ladder fuels, trying to treat the small things that would make a fire go up into the crowns of the trees. Round structures, same idea.
Matt, can I ask a question real quick? Some of those are showing some pretty small trees that have been left. Is that because of canopy?
I don't need to cut every single tree. If I have a 4-inch canopy tree and there's nothing around it for 10 feet that it's gonna get up into the canopy, absolutely we can leave those trees. It's not bare ground. This is not Seaview Road right now with a 40-foot wide strip going down the power line. We have that ability to be selective.
This is to maintain shade, and then if you look at where this is gonna go in 1,000 years, just give you the next Armstrong Redwoods, right? Old growth, serial climax.
So by law, the state is actually trying to develop old growth along our water courses. Over time, that's what the design of the actual rules are.
Which are very fire resistant too. Can't say they're fireproof. but-
No, but you can't. Oops, sorry. So this is just a before and after of the same shot. Here's the property line of the untreated versus the treated there. Yeah, kind of shocking. So that's kind of the Fort Ross Road project that's getting started on Monday. I realize people are gonna have questions. We know this is our first chance to really prove that we can do this type of work without really raising, you know, a lot of concerns. We know we're gonna get questions. We know we're gonna get phone calls. You know, don't hesitate to reach out. Try and be respectful of the operators we have. Don't jump on them because you're late and you didn't plan appropriately to get to town. Try and be respectful of them. You know, they're people as well. They live in this community. You know, Noah's back here now. Charles lives at the top of the road. You know, everybody here is going to be working. We're trying to do this as a community. Do you want me to pause or just jump straight into the bigger permit?
Let's just jump.
Okay.
Jump off.
So, as part of this ongoing effort is getting the permitting in place. This grant that the committee just got, about a third of the cost of it is actually putting together what is called a VTP. This is a vegetation treatment program, and it is a long-term permit to allow for a whole lot of planning, a whole lot of different treatments. Also to protect those resources that we're talking about, to go out and make sure that we identify where all the cultural resources are, where the wildlife are, so that when funding becomes available, whether it's CAL FIRE, whether it's the North Bay Forest Improvement Program, the NRCS, or some other funding entity, Coastal Conservancy, wherever those funding things are available, we will have a permit in place that allows for all of these things to occur. The thing about that is that then gives Marshall especially and his crews abilities to come out and do training runs on our places, to come out and take some of the liability issues on that a private landowner may not feel comfortable with Sasha or myself coming out and lighting the match, because there is certain liability when we strike the land that the state can do with a little bit differently. He can't be involved in a project without a permit at this point in time. He can't. So this really gives him the ability to be more involved. Part of the next 6 months or so is going to be putting these things down, these projects that we hope to accomplish. Some of them may be in theory, some of them may never happen, but at least getting this permit ready so that when that funding comes available, we can move forward.
And these VTPs are good for about 10 years,
Yep.
you know, give or take. So that gives us enough time to plan and implement.
Included in the actual grant awarding was 7.3 miles of road and I believe 165 acres of actual project work that Judy and her board knew they wanted to try and accomplish. So here's an overview of the 4 ranches. Yes, Star.
So would that permit then cover, say, the whole Willella Ranch and our roads?
That entire area.
Okay.
All of those ranches, so the 4 ranches, Muniz, Navarro, Willalla, Seaview. That's the footprint. So we are really starting to plan for the next 10 years of projects out here. Realize that your private goals and objectives may not necessarily meet the community's needs. You may want a fuel break down here, but the real structure may need to go up on top, as we've talked about. So there's going to be some landowner input that's through this process, but ultimately there may be an education process that is needed about why that fuel break is going here and not surrounding your house.
Yeah, one thing I would just like to say also is that when we started planning these projects, you know, I mean, we were told ridge lines, ridge lines, ridge lines. And my feeling and my response to that was, in order to engage the landowners, we need to start with the landowners and what is personally, important to them. We'll work on Fort Ross Road because it's a major access. We'll work on the ranch roads. Then we'll work on the landscape and the ridge lines. And thankfully, we're moving in that direction now. We got Fort Ross Road. We got the primary access roads on all 4 ranches. And now we're going to start moving to some of those other roads as we move up to the ridge line. We're looking at Moorheart Ridge. We're looking at Smith Ridge or Creighton Ridge. I think we have a very good plan in place, and I look forward to an opportunity when we can talk to your communities, the individual communities. We'll have a separate one, Leandro, for Blue Jay Road, definitely, and just, inform you about, what's coming and what you can expect and how you can get involved.
And this ties to that whole pods talk as well, too.
Yeah.
So here's Seaview Ranch, the fuel break. So this is Bowendale in here going up. Seaview Road, or not Vineyard Road, and then this is Camper Creek. Thank you. Those projects have already been awarded that funding. So those are actually already known that we wanted to try and accomplish those areas. Judy's next project is to get all of you to say yes. Same thing, Navarro Ranch. And then also this does include Muniz. So this is really trying to get connectivity from, Russian Gulch, all the way over Black Mountain, all the way down Navarro Ranch, and all the way out to the ranches.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you go back to Navarro Ranch briefly, please?
Hazel's Road.
Yep.
Project.
So basically, starting where we did Drew's, going up the hill.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so what does this really get us? So I said earlier, I have this toolbox that is full of tools, and this permit opens up those toolboxes, whether it is burn piles, prescribed fire, use of herbicide. I know I'm going to get pelted for this, but this opens up that avenue. Realize that part of this education process is going to be talking about cost per acre. And if you are having to do this type of work every 5 to 7 years, there are things that need to come into play. We talked about broom earlier, and how do we get rid of broom effectively? Some of it we can get rid of by pulling, some of it we can get rid of by grazing, some of it we may have to take some other radical steps. This permit is going to address the permitting side of that to comply with rules and regulations. It is not shoving something down your throat and saying you have to do this. It is just paving the way for the permitting process.
Yeah, and Matt can correct me on the process here. So how this is gonna go down, Matt's gonna send the Cal VP to the state. There'll be a 30-day comment period. Herbicide will be recognized in there as a potential treatment. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but I'm just gonna say, don't fight it, leave it in there as an option. You never know if we wanna use it in the future. I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen, but it leaves it in there as an option.
So part of this is going to be an education process. How many of you have an idea of how much chemical per acre you think going out and treating 500 trees per acre, how much chemical you think is actually utilized? About a cup. Not much, you're right, it doesn't take very much. There are ways to do chemical application that directly put the material into the tree, rather than spraying it like your Roundup with a wand and getting foliar drift and things like that. Again, this is just a tool. I'm not saying that you have to do this, but when you are talking about using herbicide, which may cost $300 or $400 an acre, compared to the cost of bringing in a masticator that might cost $4,000 to $6,000 per acre, these are things that a landowner is going to have a serious conversation about. Are we going to be effective? Can we afford $4,000 to $6,000 every 5 to 7 years? These are things that we have to really look at responsibly. I'm not gonna tell you you have to do this.
Yeah,
Rick?
our job is just to put the information out there, is to provide what we know and what we have available, in our resource kit to give to you as a landowner to make informed decisions.
Are you talking about Garlock and Hackers Court?
A massive here, yeah, generally speaking. And I realize
Away from the water course, but
absolutely it has to comply with the rules and regulations and the permit. So the Cal VTP is an EIR that has been run through the state. The state actually did the EIR for what is called the treatable landscape for the whole state. My job is to analyze all of the potential things that could happen, will happen, and then make it comply with the environmental impact report that has already been done.
So that has all the, what's called best management practice, BMPs, and that looks at site-specific conditions. And remember, it doesn't say it's gonna be used, it just leaves it in there as an option to be used.
And I understand the concern with Rick, I truly do, and I know what the science says, I know what people's concerns are gonna be living in this community. It's just a tool. Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm cool with that, but what happens, what do you do with the standing trees then?
So, if our goal is to reduce the fuel load, we're gonna put that chemical in that tree, let it sit for probably 3 to 4 weeks, and then we're gonna come back and treat it, and cut it, and either chip it, pile and burn it, broadcast burn it later on when it's appropriate. We have a whole range of tools that we can come back. I am not about to go and hack and squirt and leave that timber stand or that tree standing. That's not something I'm willing to look at. I know you're not willing to look at it. So, you know, the Mendocino County ordinance, I think it's Measure K, no, never mind, it's our, that says that hack and squirt can't be, or the community, the fire chiefs have said is a problem. It's because the industrial landowners that are using it aren't going and cutting the trees down afterwards.
So, what is the advantage though? Is it doesn't sprout?
Yes, absolutely. It kills the roots, it kills the stump, and it doesn't sprout back. So, you know, if it's done right, at the right time of year, it's a couple $100 per acre. When I come in with the masticator, there's a chance that is going to cause sprouting to happen. When Sasha comes in with fire, or Marshall comes in with fire, because all of these things evolve with fire, their mechanism for survival is sprouting. You go out into the glass fire or the Walbridge fire, and you look at the sprouting that has happened because they haven't gotten a full kill, it can be detrimental too. So burning at the right time of year so that we accomplish our goals may you know, really be part of this. Marshall and his staff and Timber Cove and Fort Ross have been involved with Reef Campground for decades now. The last time, or no, it was the time before last when we tried to burn it. We tried to burn it in May and couldn't get it to light. Tried to burn it in July. We burnt one field and it was a massive dirty burn. And then finally in August it burnt. You know, and so, you know, using all these tools appropriately, timing, putting in the research. A lot of this is going to be me going out and figuring out what our fuel loads are, where they are, that map that I had earlier. You know, how much of that has changed in the last 12 or 10 years. There's a lot of science that's going to go into this permit. A lot of relying on Sasha and Marshall and their staff is going to go into this permit. It's not just what.
And it probably will be from the madrones, the tannos, the hardwoods, not redwoods, not Douglas fir. It's going to be species specific too, not trying to just kill a forest with herbicide.
And in case it's useful, I know fully back that stem injection using a herbicide is a hugely valuable tool in restarting forests if it's used with an ecological mindset of getting the right balance of the right trees back on the landscape. Because we massively skewed that by excluding fire for so long and also not harvesting bay nuts and acorns the way they have been historically. And we have an issue because now even if we use fire over and over again, they're still going to keep resprouting. And this is a way to just hit that reset button really quick and get the right balance of all those trees back on the landscape.
So in places we've got a foot of duff on the ground. I'm not necessarily comfortable with running fire through there just yet because I'm going to kill everything because it's going to cook the roots.
Including the redwoods.
Including the redwoods. Absolutely, we can kill redwoods. I mean, you look at Big Basin and what just happened there, it's tragic. Old growth redwood, I think they lost 50 to 60% of the old growth because, not necessarily because the tree itself got consumed, but because of the material on the ground that either compromised the structure of that tree completely or cooked the roots and killed it. We can go out there in some places, treat that duff layer, treat that vegetation, so that in 3 or 5 years, Sasha can come in and do the burning that is the follow-up. Fire, and to a certain extent, livestock may be our cheapest options if you don't consider the fencing for the livestock.
Yeah.
They may be our cheapest option going forward, but you know, it's going to take education. It's going to take people understanding that smoke in certain times of year is better than smoke in September and October when we're getting, you know, massive clouds. There's environmental trade-offs to all of this stuff. Pure and simple.
Matt, just one quick clarification.
Yep.
With the injection, that has to be done while the tree is still standing and living. You cannot like cut a tree and then inject the
There are different tools for different types of
Okay, so
situations.
these are your tools. I mean, there is.
Yes.
Okay.
So I mean, there are tools to do it foliarly. There are tools to do it systemically. There are tools to treat stumps after the material's been cut. They all have different effectiveness situations. So for example, if I go out and I cut a tan oak tree right now, and then I wait for it to sprout back up next spring and I spray it with herbicide, there's probably a 30 or 40% chance that it may not be as effective as if I had done it before I affected that tree at all. That chemical effectiveness really works best if you haven't altered that tree whatsoever. You know, and so, you know, realizing that there's different tools for different situations, absolutely. Different tools. Come on, play.
Maybe just a little time for you.
While we're working on that, I will say we've been having a ton of success turning in redwoods that are overstocked and over fuel loaded in winter, taking off a little bit at a time.
Huh.
But that in and of itself is an art form that we're still developing because it's hard work.
Huh.
It can't be done.
There we go. All right. This is a masticator. This is another one of our tools in the tool chest. This is going to be used on flatter ground. The reason we can't use this on Fort Ross Road is I can't leave the road prism. But this is a great tool. I mean, it's an effective tool to treat large amounts of acreage in a rapid amount of time. And it basically turns this into a pile of chips. The chips are left on site, the fuels are redistributed to the ground, it reduces that canopy, it actually leaves the carbon on site so that we're still sequestering that carbon, we're not burning it up and releasing it into the atmosphere. But like I said, there are trade-offs with all of these tools that we're going to be talking about and looking at. So here's kind of a before treatment and an after treatment. The one picture I couldn't find last night or this morning was my picture of livestock, goats and grazing. I realized the headache that goats and sheep and even cows can cause with dealing with mountain lions and bears and everything else that we have in this landscape, the fencing that needs to be done to protect, you know, sensitive areas. However, they may be some of our best tools. A lot of you have raised livestock in the past. We may need to figure out a way to have a community livestock, you know, system where, you know, everybody shares a few goats or a few sheep and rotates them around from day to day to different places. These are all things that are in the toolbox that this permit opens up to allow to happen. I think that's the last of the permit discussion part. So, you know, this is a long-term vision that we're getting ready to write this permit for, to try and open up avenues, to try and make funding available.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Right.
Good, Marshall.
We've invited Marshall to come and just give us an overview of this year's fire season, and which he's been coming to this community every year to do, and just let us know what we're in for. Marshall.
All right, so I'm gonna keep it quick, which means I'm gonna run the chance of saying a bunch of stuff really quick and not fully developing my concepts, which is pretty much what I do every day. I'll just talk about percentages and just the variables that go into it. Fuels, weather, topography, that's why we're talking about fuels management. So fuels, weather, topography. We all know what the fuels are. Multi-years of non-normal rainfall, fog drip, whatever it is, things are dry. Our vegetation is broken out into live fuels and dead fuels, so all the stuff laying on the forest floor is all those dead fuels that pretty much only get water from fog, rain, or water coming out of the ground, moisture. So the longer our summer is, the longer our solar radiation days are, that stuff's drying. And then our live vegetation, which is the live trees, they're getting stressed by the drought. You're seeing Douglas fir trees probably dying now because of the drought. And so that's just all the available energy that's available out there to be consumed in a fire. So that's our vegetation. So on that scale, you know the drought, you know some parts of the day are warmer than others, we know about our fog. Really just a variable of when's our winter gonna start, and is it gonna be a sustained winter, not like 10 inches of rain and then dry for 2 months. So those are the variables. So as we get closer and closer to the fall, late winter, we need to get the rain. And those are our most critical times for fire. Okay, so that's the vegetation. Then you throw in the topography portion. Well, we know this area is very steep. Fire in general wants to do the opposite of water. So, think about that. If you're on top of a ridge, mid-slope, like what we're talking about Fort Ross Road. So fire wants to burn uphill, wants to burn up canyon, generally. And then weather. And the biggest weather variable is the wind. Wind blows, fire goes. We can talk about multiple ignitions at one time, like the lightning fire in 2020. But in general, it's the wind. Okay, so how hot it is, matters. How dry it is, the relative humidity matters. But it's a lot of it's about the wind. So when those things like a Rubik's Cube all align together, windy days, warm days, available vegetation, available fuels, that's the percentage, right? That's the percentage day I worry about. Is that 3% of this year? Is that a 1% of this year? And I'll just go out on a crystal ball limb. And I said this a couple months ago to all the fire chiefs in the county. I don't see, there's a potential of having a bad fire every year. I just think percentage-wise, this is not like the worst summer ever, in my opinion. But as soon as I say that, I need to knock on wood. Because remember, we need an ignition to occur. Most ignitions are human-caused, so if you guys never cause a fire, then I'm going to be right. Let's work on that. Let's control our ignitions. We know lightning is the biggest wild card out there, especially dry lightning in 2020. So if we can control our ignitions, and then if you've how intense, how much heat the fire produces, how fast the fire burns, but mainly fire intensity is all about the fuel loading, really. So manage fuels along roads, which is where fires start normally. Around homes, fires start. Where people are working, fires start. Manage your fuels, and then how fast the fire burns is predominantly based upon the wind and slope. All right, wind-driven fire. North wind is scary because that puts a wind on the north aspect, which is usually has our most amount of vegetation as well. So don't start fires. You see somebody mowing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a windy day, do me a favor and tell them to stop. Or you see someone doing a burn pile. We just had a burn pile fire caused the other day. Someone tried to take advantage of I did it over the weekend, it was moist. They tried to take advantage of the 4th of July weekend and do a burn pile. That caused a fire that burned somebody's barn down. So those things happen. The fire on Myers-Grade, there was 3 fires there the other day. I don't know exactly what caused that, but that shows you that even though the grass may look green, we get the fog there. In fact, it was fog when I drove out up this morning. Fires can happen. So just be aware, reduce our emissions. Remember, the fall is our critical component around here. But all in all, I think hopefully we have another buy year, just like we had a buy year last year too.
Over the last few years, the major fires have been started by PG&E. Do we know anything about if they've improved the system? So they had lines up that were decades and decades old.
Yeah,
it's better.
I can answer that in a couple different ways. If you want to just look at the stats, there's been PG&E caused fires already this year. So, what's our comparison? They're gonna, you know, one of the things is, well, climate change is affecting them too, right? And so, I think you're gonna probably see more power to shutoffs. They've done those, what's called the reclosures now, so a limb falls through a power line, it shuts the power out right away. So, in this area, I'm trying to think if we've had a PG&E caused fire this summer yet.
Bill Owens Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think how old it was?
Yeah, there was a
Yep.
limb on there.
What was
Yep.
it?
Yeah, that's what I
The
heard.
power never went out.
That's true, the power didn't go out, and that's why.
Right,
Yeah.
so, I don't know conclusively, PG&E came out, I don't know conclusively that was PG&E caused fire. I don't know. Was there another one?
Bill Owens Road.
Below.
Schooner.
Yeah, so that was one up on Gualala, early season fire, north of Gualala, southern Mendocino County. Yeah, PG&E. So I think you are gonna see PG&E caused fires. Just remember, there's private power lines out here too. There's service drops out here. There's generators with electrical cords perhaps out here. The Tubbs fire is an example of what CAL FIRE said is not a PG&E power line. So we gotta be careful of the non-PG&E power lines also that exist.
We had the PG&E crew that's out here doing the work right now. They had an emergency on Friday. They had 2 trees on the line on Friday.
They dropped them on the line.
They found, the inspectors found them on the
On,
line.
yeah.
So here's what you guys can do. There's a PG&E app. You take a photo and you submit it straight to PG&E. You can obviously go through me. I'm going to go through the PUC, and PG&E is not going to like that. They're going to take action probably right away. But they're addressing civilian concerns right away too. So the law says, no matter the power line, minimum 3-foot clearance, and no dead or dying trees can fall into the power line. So if you see any type of dead, dying tree on your property anywhere, take a photo, send it to them. If you think it's dead or dying, send it to them. Put them on notice. It makes them come out and look at it. Because otherwise, they're sending contractors out, which are not from the community. I'm not going to say they don't care, but maybe they don't hike every ridge, every middle of nowhere as best they can. And so if you guys are out there noticing those things, report it. So if you see a cracked power pole, woodpecker infested power pole, whatever it is, report it. And if it's tree wire, that's that line, the power lines that are insulated, you got to report that. They may not even know that's an issue. So PG&E, go to their website. I can get that to you too, Judy. And I can go online now and see who's reported stuff. I can look at the photos. Granted, PG&E might screen that, but in areas where I've advocated for this, people are doing that. And it's great because it's getting PG&E out here addressing issues too.
And I just want to say, I just talked to the PG&E contractor that came up trying to get poles near me. He said they just unionized and will now be having more long-term contractors. He said before they were getting paid terrible money, and so they had new guys coming in all the time. He said now they're making good money and they plan to be here for a while. So you might actually start to get to know the PG&E contractor that's coming to your place.
I spoke with one of the workers for PG&E, told me a story that rather concerned me. He said they were hiring people from out of state.
Absolutely.
And they had to hire arborists, except that the arborist on his crew was from Florida. And he thought a madrone tree was a redwood. So,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
but what do you expect from a criminal organization?
well, let's shed some light on CAL FIRE. Some of the CAL FIRE firefighters we're hiring right now, they don't know trees. They don't know trees. You know, there's a workforce shortage, and there's just a lot of inexperienced people coming into all the industries right now. And CAL FIRE has some other problems too. So there's firefighters in Cazadero that probably can't find this place right now. I mean, that's what's happening.
Right.
And it wasn't California.
so the codes you'll see for the PG&E crews right now, there's yellow flagging around trees that are going to get cut. There is red and white flagging on trees that are in imminent hazard that they are supposed to remove in the next 2 weeks. They're going to be out here on and off all summer. It's just how they're set up and they're geared up right now.
Marshall, I don't know if you or Mandarin can answer this, but I know in talking about prescribed burns, what I'm finding out is the first thing
Yeah, so the Forest Service, a federal agency, had an escape burn early on this summer, and they have a moratorium, no prescribed burning because of that while they review it. I don't know the exact details, but if you go back in history to 2000, the Los Alamos fire was in the same area, winds picked up, on a prescribed burn, if they're burning in forest, there's a lot of residual burning, it's not burning grass, stumps and things burn for a period of time, wind picked up. I don't know what happened on this situation. I'm probably thinking it's a weather thing. That's the biggest variable we can't control. We know fire wants to burn uphill, but if a really strong wind comes and pushes it side hill, that's where things happen. So maybe we could another, maybe not enough resources, firefighters available, a lack of admitting it's an escape burn. I haven't seen the official report yet. Obviously, these reports get a lot more attention than all the good burning that gets done because people focus on the bad stuff. But I think we need to wait for the official report to come out. But just looking at other reports, I just attended a state in Nevada. They had an escape a couple years ago. Unfortunately, burned some homes down. It was something a stump that smoldered for a long period of time. Rain came. They were trying to get the firefighters out of the area because they were going to get mud and wind could drive the roads, and that wind blew the fire out of the control line. So it is very tricky, but it's a small percentage that escape, but that also those small percentage gets the most amount of notoriety. And like Sasha said, prescribed burning is pretty darn boring.
Right.
Most of the time. It's the non-boring ones you hear about.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we need to wait. I can send you guys some other reports that have been out there. But I'm just going to tell you this. When I look back at my career in CAL FIRE and CDF, and believe it or not, this place was a conservation camp just before I started with CAL FIRE. So I've seen some big time changes. I lost my hair. Big time changes in CAL FIRE. In 1999, there was an escape burn up in Shasta County, the loaded fire. It was BLM. In 2000, the Cerro Grande fire happened in New Mexico. That whole generation of CAL FIRE from about 2000 to 2010 did no prescribed burning. And that generation now is more or less in leadership positions in CAL FIRE. They don't, that's why I say that's why I picked on CAL FIRE as firefighters. Firefighters may not be the best prescribed burners, may not be the best vegetation management workers. The department thinks my job is to go to fires and put them out. They don't know that probably 80% of what I do is this type of stuff. I'm trying to prevent the fire. Firefighters, that's not their DNA. It's about, and I have a little bit of a forestry background, and obviously I know a lot of the people in the room, that what I do is not what the mainstream CAL FIRE firefighter is doing. So just so you guys know. And CAL FIRE is pulled in a lot of different directions. You've heard CAL FIRE used here in this meeting about funding. It's not me giving you guys $1 million. CAL FIRE being the lead environmental agency, those days are probably gone. We need Matt Greene to do the Cal BTP now. CAL FIRE being the implementer of projects, like going out and doing roadside clearance. Probably what Black Mountain Camp did way back in the 80s. We're not doing that no more. You're not seeing our bulldozers going out there and opening up fire roads. It's a totally different regime, and then it's always going to the shiny object, which is normally the fire that's happening. So right now, locally, the Cazadero CAL FIRE is not even in quarters because we've got a fire going on in the Sierras, wrapping up. Obviously, there's also the Yosemite fire. We had a fire in Lake County the other day, and everyone's just getting pulled in so many different directions. It's very hard. So you're getting a revolving door, like the CFIT now with Megan Reeves gets replaced. And so it's very hard with all this stuff happening. So really, if you guys want stuff to happen, you need to be your own advocate for your own property. You need to work with your neighbors to get projects like these we've talked about today done. There's only so much I can do because whether you like me or not, I've joked about this before, I'm government. I'm not here to go onto your property and report stuff. I'm actually okay, I know this is recorded, working in the gray area. I'm not going to talk to Matt Greene. Okay, so we gotta make this all work because you've also heard me say that this is they call it the time wedge. Right now we have a lot of options available. As we get closer and closer to the fall, the fire happens. I show up at your house in a fire. I only have a couple options.
Yep.
Am I going to save you, save your house, and try to stop the fire? And some days, I may not even be able to save you. I got to save myself. So that's what's really tricky. I'm willing to risk a little bit more because I know you guys and I know the area. But the firefighter coming from LA County is probably not going to go down, I don't want to even say a road because you're going to get mad at me. Whatever road it is. They may not even come down here. They've never been here before. They don't know you can probably ride a fire out in the parking lot here. So
So that's what is really going on. So we need to do stuff now. I know we're never gonna 100% agreement on anything, and there's always a risk of doing anything. There's a risk of clearing along a road. There's a risk of doing a prescribed burn, but there's also a risk of doing nothing. And there's an environmental risk of doing nothing, I think, too, because these fires are destructive. Not just homes, not just lives, they're ecologically destructive. And you know what? At the end of the day, I gotta be okay with that, because I gotta be able to tell myself, I've done everything I can do. I've tried to argue every argument I can I can argue with myself even, but we really gotta figure this out, because remember, when I show up your house, I may not have any options available other than let's get you out of here. Or I'm telling you to go, we have no options today. And it could be because there's so many fires across the county, across the state, like 2020. That could be another thing that's happening. It's not just that there's a big malicious, big fires. So remember, it goes back to that fire potential. Vegetation, fuels, that's what's great about the grants. I'm working to do this stuff. Hard to come home, great. It's about the weather. I don't know if we want to try to control the weather, another meeting. And the topography is what it is. So really, that's why vegetation, fuels, your house is a fuel, so structural compatibility, all the stuff Carleon talks about, forest management, 100 years of fire suppression, we've been doing too good of a job. That's what it all comes down to. So I hope we have a buy year this year, this summer, this fall. And what I'm also seeing, I know we talk about the year-round fire season, but what I'm really seeing is like a summer, fall fire season, and then like a February, March fire season. And so we're really getting confined about when we can do this type of work. So I can argue every day is a great day to do a prescribed burn, every day is a bad day to do a prescribed burn. It's just, where do you want me to land on that side of the argument? Because I think we could burn any day of the year if we do it safely, and it doesn't have to be 10, 20, hundreds of acres. It could be something small. It's the little rust spot on the Golden Gate Bridge where we're going to deal with this, this day. We just got to go somewhere, and we got to get people to start understanding. Because if you come out to a prescribed burn, you see how it burns, and then there's some major fire later this year, you're going to have some knowledge of where that fire is going, how it's burning, and that's going to allow you to make better decisions of what you should do before government tells you what to do. Okay, so I think we got to change culture, and we're only here for a little short period on the earth, so we kind of get a little snapshot versus what's happening in the big context of what everything's going on. So anyway, I took that topic, Judy, and went crazy with it, but it's great to really meet on days like today, and I think we're coming back on July 23rd or sometime later this month. But really, let's keep these projects getting into the hopper. Let's get the environmental review. Let's get stuff shovel ready. Shared responsibility. You take care of your house. You take care of your defensible space. You get your water sources. We'll work big projects together. We can come back and talk more about grazing, prescribed burning, herbicide, whatever it is. But remember, we're all on the same team. We just might have different opinions, different views on things. Remember, my options may be limited on those bad days, and I may be an asshole to you on those bad days too. So sorry. It's just, there's only so much I can do.
Marshall, can you mentioned that we were coming back on the 23rd. We have a larger planning group with all of our communities, all the way up to the Sea Ranch. It's called the Sonoma Coast Collaborative. And we started working on fire pods at the last meeting. We will be working on them again on the 23rd. Can you explain a little bit about the pods and what they're about?
Yeah, so the pods, and I don't know if I have the acronym right now, but it's proposed or potential operational delineation, I forget it, systems. It's basically pre-identifying where we're going to stop a fire at. So let's say, for example, a fire starts on the north side of Fort Ross Road here, it's burning towards Mohart Ridge or Craig Ridge. It's saying, hey, we're going to stop the fire. I'm going to make this a big box. I keep the fire west of King Ridge Road, east of Seaview Road, and south of Hauser Bridge. And that's huge area, right? But it's basically defining, like, what's the leader's intent? Where do we see this fire ending up in the long term? Where do we need to do evacuation? So the smaller we can make those zones, the better. But in reality, we only have so much out there to work with right now. So we're looking at roads, whether those be public, private, even fire roads, to pre-identify areas. Where that'll help with grants and everything is you basically can say now, For example, this road from PPI to Mina's Ranch, that's a road CAL FIRE has identified as a potential spot we want to stop a fire at. Okay, that may help you get grant funding. From a fire putting out point of view, fire suppression point of view, remember I talked about the options I have when stuff's hitting the fan. Our options, our go-to maneuvers is bulldozers. We're bulldozing everything. That's not always effective, and we may not have the time to actually bulldoze anything before the fire. So this is going ahead of time and getting the masticators, getting the bulldozers, whatever it is, getting it done in a planned, environmentally friendly planning process versus me showing up and all that stuff Matt just said. I don't have to follow CEQA no more. I'm an emergency exemption, and I just do whatever the hell I want, and it may not be pretty. And that's why I'm telling you, sometimes I don't have options. I gotta just do it. Because I can't say, I'm not gonna pull the bulldozer here today and threaten the town with whatever. We just gotta do it. And I've seen a lot of destruction, but I don't have any options. So you guys need to give me options, and the pods are just another way you can give me an option. I know I got a road eventually. I know I got a ridge top. We'll ride off this hillside here and let it burn, whether it's catastrophic or whether we light it and then maybe make it a backing fire. It's giving me those options ahead of time. And that's something I think CAL FIRE did historically as an organization with our fire roads. You look at some of the counties that have kept their fire roads up, like Marin County. We've just gotten far, far away from that in Sonoma County for whatever reason. And there's not much I can do now as CAL FIRE to get a CAL FIRE bulldozer out there to do anything unless the Cal VTP things are in place. And some of the stuff may be at no cost to you guys. The VTP goes through, CAL FIRE tags onto that, and we send out a masticator. We send out a bulldozer because Matt Greene covered all the environmental review for us. So that it's just a tool like Matt's saying. But that's the pods concept. I don't know when that's gonna go public. We've been working on the pods in this area. If anything, your biggest concern is probably gonna be that they're too big and we should make them smaller. But the initial push was to get them out there, get them seen. We know not everyone's gonna agree, and then we can work on further refining the pods. And some of the road work in Cal VTP with your existing, when I talk about your area to other people, I sometimes talk about the Fort Ross spiderweb of all the roads. But your road network does potentially have a lot of smaller pods in them, but when we compare that across what we're doing across this whole region, we're not getting down to that scale yet of really small pods. And a pod could actually be a burn plot in the future too, where we're burning 100 acres or 1,000 acres as part of a burn plot too.
So we will be talking about that on the 23rd. We'll have a meeting here, and so if you can be sure to sign up for our newsletter, and we'll be sending it out, and we're working with Ella Griffith, who is going to do a little write-up in the newsletter also about the pods and what we're doing here.
And Ella's another great resource. She's local. She works with Sterling.
Mark Tuckman. Yeah.
So, part of all of this is leading into, Sasha mentioned, what's that, field modeling, I can't even think of it, or what do we use now? The fire simulation model.
I don't know.
Behave Plus or
Farsight?
Farsight Plus.
Farsight, okay.
And designing some of these things. Fort Ross Road is 30-foot wide. That's not ideally what I would like to see there. It's what we were restricted to through funding, through permitting. Some of this is going to be looking at what is an effective structure even. Part of my senior thesis in college was designing fuel breaks and modeling them on an average weather day to try and have that system or that fuel break hold up to just an average fire. And what we actually saw with those fire programs was half a mile spotting. Marshall on the Tubbs fire, I think we saw 14 miles spotting. We had debris that was raining down at Stony Ford dump.
Yeah, well, watch this Yosemite fire that's going on right now. That's in the Beetle Kill over in the Sierra Foothills.
Right.
It started off as a very small fire, 2 acres. It's up to like 600.
It's gonna blow.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 100,000, and it's because of the spotting. Because we can cut handline, we can do whatever, but if it spots 14 miles downwind, we're in some horrible topography. nothing we can do, nature's in control.
So even though we may be talking about strategic locations for things, that doesn't mean that, you know, each acre of ground shouldn't be evaluated and managed as stewards of the land. You know, really looking holistically at your land and trying to come up with how to steward that land into changing climate, you know, and improving the health of everything out here. Because like Marshall said, if shit hits the fan, that land may have to fend for itself. So how can we plan for that eventuality?
A lot of options right now, they get less and less, as until when the fire happens.
Sober.
Sorry, that was supposed to be the guy who threw tomatoes out.
Where are we now?
Tomato season's just coming on.
Yeah, so PODS meeting on July 23rd.
We'll send the notice out.
Yeah, and maybe what we can do on days like this is I can stay later if we wanna do like other topics or other talks or do like property visits or whatever it might be. Cause there's tons of stuff going on. Like, we didn't even talk about some of the CAL FIRE projects coming up, the Sonoma Land Trust and other things. But I'm trying to push CAL FIRE as much as I can to get stuff done too. So.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you'll talk about this on the 23rd, but is there something in the pods where you can add in information, like obviously you know about the pond on the top of the J-Ridge Cronies, but like.
Yeah, so that's more the pre-attack mapping.
Yeah, I mean, is there some